We're here today to tell you about Oswego Quilters and to introduce one of our members, Emmy Lou Johnson. But before we talk to Emmy Lou, here's some history to give you context for our conversation to follow. Oswego Quilters began quite by accident in 1956 when a quilt top was donated to the Oswego United Methodist Church, and the Women's Guild was asked to turn it into a finished quilt. None of the women knew what they were doing, but Helen Grigg stepped up and figured it out. More quilt tops appeared from cedar chests and cupboards. The group continued to meet and soon moved to Helen's home, where they hand quilted every Tuesday until her death at age 90 in 2011. Helen kept track of every member hour and charged the owner of the quilt top accordingly. Funds collected were then donated to a charity of the group's collective choice. Over the last 67 years, more than 150 quilters have participated in the completion of 653 quilts. With Helen gone, the group was invited to move to the home of Michael and Alice Green, where they have continued their work. Because the Green home is now for sale, we will soon transition to 2 locations. The Lake Grove Presbyterian Church will host an Oswego Quilters West group, and Cherrywood Village, a senior residential community, will host an East Side group. This move has prompted us to find a home for our archives. Helen saved everything quilt-related over the years, so there is an extensive record. Several group members have worked hard to organize and safely store this material, and the Oswego Heritage House has very generously accepted it into their collection. At their suggestion, we have asked Emmy Lou Johnson to reminisce about her history with Oswego Quilters in a video recording to be included, and that is why we are having this conversation with her today. Emmy Lou is the quilter with the longest tenure in our group, and thus the most qualified to speak to our history. I'd like to start by asking her to tell us her story and how she became a member of the Oswego Quilters.
I had a friend ask me to come to the group. And when I did, I walked into Helen's house and I said, I've been here before. I brought my mother here and my grandmother, and only on occasion, not regularly, but I had been to that house and quilted with that group. And I've been here myself now for 30 years, but my mother, my grandmother, and my great aunt, my grandmother's sister-in-law, she was a member of the original group. And so I kind of have a history. And then I brought several other women, about 6 or 8 of them, to join the group too. The group used to be much larger, but now we're down to 5 or 6 at a time. But we still carry on. But I like to remember Helen. She was quite a hostess, quite a lady, and everyone was welcome. You just come in and join the group and become a part with 3 minutes of tell of your history, who you are, where you came from, and so forth, and then you're in. And come every week. But Helen herself was so friendly, a good hostess, very determined in things that you could and couldn't do. Like, you didn't talk politics, you didn't talk religion, you didn't stab stitch, which is going down with your needle and then using your hand underneath to bring it back up, because it didn't look good on the back side of the quilt. So that was not allowed. But if anyone else wants to chip in and say what they thought about Helen, Feel free.
Let's talk about lunch.
Okay. We used to just bring our yogurt and put it in Helen's refrigerator. And then some people started bringing other things they wanted to share. And pretty soon the yogurts got left behind and Helen couldn't eat them all. So we started then to do potluck lunches. And then if it's your birthday, you bring your own cake and then we all sing for you. And that's always fun. We have a song called, what? She May Have Seen Better Days. But one of our ladies didn't like to sing it because she said it was a bar song. But we still sing it to all of our quilters. And you bring your own cake, and that way you have a party. We share a lot of very good recipes in our potlucks. Sally Ann brought wonderful corn salad. Other people brought different things. Margaret, brought desserts, wonderful. And we had a lot of exchanging recipes. But we also exchanged quilt patterns. Several of us made the jewel box pattern that Helen got from somebody somewhere, and we all liked it so well. And several of us have made grandmother's flower garden, double wedding ring, stacking white quilts, I Spy quilts for children. And anyone else want to contribute other names? Quilt patterns, old traditional ones.
Dresden plate.
Dresden plate, that's another one.
Drunkard's path.
Drunkard's path.
What about log cabin? Have there been many log cabins made here?
Log cabin, yes. There are many, many of them. And I have a book, 75 years old, and it's got 482 different illustrations. So we're never short of ideas. And people contribute original ideas like Ann Johnston. And so, yes, it's fun to put together quilts, fun to quilt them, and fun to have friends around the quilt. Another thing, in the 30 years I've been in the group, several women have lost their husbands. And so it turned into a grief group. We didn't need the kind that were offered by churches or funeral homes, a grief group to go to, because we had one around the quilt. Even Helen lost her husband in that time. Our group used to be like 30 at a time, and now we're down to about 5 or 6. So many have died, but we carry on, and we are loyal to the group. So, anyone else like to contribute to that? You're also talkative.
Tell us your age.
Oh, I'm 96, but I'm still making quilts. I'm still coming to quilting every week if I have a ride. I still enjoy it. I was raised around a quilt. My mother always had a quilt in the frame, and 6 girls in my family. Only 2 of us have gone on to become quilters, but we all learned, and it's a fun habit, hobby.
So do you remember Christmas parties
Oh,
or
yes.
special celebrations?
Yes, besides bringing your own cake to celebrate and have a party, we always had a Christmas party at somebody's home. Many years it was Lois Wheeler had us to her house, and then for many years, Jackie Aiden had us to her house. In between, there's been a few different ones, but we always have a party. We used to exchange white elephant gifts. Some of them were pretty funny, and some of them were pretty blasé, but it was always fun. Yes, and
Well, last year we had it at Carol's house where she had all her,
we had it 2 years at Carol's
Yeah.
house, yes. So somebody's always willing to carry on with the tradition.
So tell us about maybe some of the group members that you remember particularly.
Oh boy, we've had some pretty special people. We've had clergy wives, lots of nurses, even today, Sally Ann. But it's amazing the number of nurses that became quilters.
we had a number of nurses from World War II who sang
What?
their songs to us around the quilt.
Yes, yes. We used to have a man that came visiting Helen's house, and he was a concert pianist, and he played old songs for us, and sometimes we'd sing along. But Helen herself had the piano there and she played the guitar, and sometimes we just have sing-alongs while we're quilting, of course.
I remember often after lunch, Janet would break out into a song and a lot of them would join in, whoever was near her at the quilt.
Say that louder.
I said, Janet, what was her last name?
Hoffman.
Janet
Hoffman,
Hoffman,
yes.
who had been in the war. And
She was a nurse.
she was a nurse and she would sing. She'd start singing after lunch often.
Oh, yes. And then we had a Holocaust survivor, Rose, and we've had some pretty famous people. But most of us are just very average.
None of us are average. I know Helen used to invite special guests every once in a while. Do any of those stand out for you?
Well, I remember the lady that we found out afterward was kind of a con artist. She came in costume as
She was Betsy Ross.
Betsy Ross, but she also had her hand out, and she had a good line. She really had us under her spell,
Yeah.
and then we found out later that she wasn't so much on the up and up. We also had one lady that went through purses, which was not good, but we all just put our purses on the table right by the front door and trusted, and that wasn't always so smart. But nothing serious or too far out.
Remember Susie Robinson?
Uh-huh.
She always wore her period clothing.
Oh, yes. She had movie stars' clothes that she bought. She had a cute figure, and she wore them so well, and she would get all dressed up in her dresses and hats and gloves and give us a fashion show, and that was always fun. And, yeah, we've had some real characters.
When we had a wedding, remember we all went to Eloise's wedding in Jackie's backyard.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Eloise married her teenage sweetheart 50 years later after his first wife died. And yeah, and then Jeannie came along and took pictures of the wedding. She didn't know people very well because she was new to the group. And she took pictures of the help and the guests and whatever. She didn't know they were there, and it was in Jackie Aiden's dooryard. It was a very pretty wedding. So, yeah, we've had some sad funerals to go to, but we've had the good times too. So,
Do you remember any special quilts that we worked on?
oh, worked on some beautiful ones. Well, Anne designed her own and she put out beautiful ones and requilted them, yes, originals. One was a Golden Gate Bridge,
Yes,
big, big quilt.
it's still on their bed,
It's still there. Yeah.
2004.
And then we all held it up out on the deck by the lake at Helen's house and had our pictures, about 25 of us, wasn't there? Yeah. Yes, we've had some beautiful quilts. And some of them we got pretty tired of, like this one, that one, some bonnet ladies, and we've done so many of them because they're very popular, and we've gotten tired of them. So,
Do you remember
but we
the
still do them.
the beautiful applique quilt that Virginia O'Donnell did, Little
Oh,
Brown
yes,
Bird?
yes.
That was,
We used to quilt for a group that was a quilt club and a reading book club. There, it was called Cover to Cover, the cover of the book and the cover being the quilt on the bed. And we quilted several of their quilts. But finally, some of our quilters were getting old and their eyesight wasn't so good, and they didn't ask us to quilt anymore. But they turned out some beautiful quilts. They were all very artistic and original, but their quilts were derived from the books they read, which is a nice concept.
It is.
What about the quilts that we've repaired as well? Because sometimes we get quilt tops that are very old.
Yes, people pull out their old quilts from their cedar chests or wherever, and we've repaired old quilts that looked like they were beyond repair, but they meant something to people, and they wanted them repaired and reused. So we did that, but especially Helen did that. And she had old fabric that she could draw from in her stash and make it match the old part of the quilt. And it was a nice service for people that really wanted those done. It meant something to the families. So, nostalgia.
Anybody else?
I was just going to point out that not only do we quilt here, but we do quilting at home also, and so we like to bring our quilts that we make and have a show and tell everybody about what we've made. So
Good
that,
point.
Yeah,
Yes,
most
absolutely.
all of us have quilt frames that we put up at home and make quilts. I've made them for all my grandchildren, 9 of them, and now I have 16 and almost 18 great-grands. They've all got quilts, and some of them more than one. So, yes, we all quilt, both here and there.
Anybody else?
We had our own quilt show here
Yes.
outside.
Oh, yes, we had a big party out in Alice's backyard, and we draped quilts all the way around the deck and
The fence.
in the back and showed them off. Mhm.
What was that occasion?
Hmm?
Do you remember what occasion that was for?
Was it about 40 years or 50 years?
I think it was a 50.
I think it was our
50th anniversary, delayed a couple of years for some reason, which I
Yeah.
don't remember.
COVID maybe?
no,
But we'll,
Maybe COVID.
no,
No, it was
before.
before, it was pre-COVID. Yeah,
yes.
but we can talk about what happened during COVID, because
We didn't meet during COVID. That was the only time, really, that we had a break because we didn't want to spread it. And then we did it with masks for a while, but we still prevailed.
Well, we did it on Zoom. Remember,
That's right, we did it on
we
Zoom.
met on Zoom
At lunchtime.
at
We
lunchtime.
did it during lunchtime and we talked about what we were eating.
We met once in a parking lot too.
Yes, we did,
Once
once
or twice, I
That
don't
was a birthday
in the
party.
parking lot at Alice's church.
It was wasn't it a farewell for somebody too?
Oh, yes, it was a farewell.
Oh, for Joan.
Joan.
Oh, Joan, was it? Anything else? Any other thoughts?
I have to look at my notes and see if I'm forgetting something.
Okay.
We had poets in the group.
Oh, yeah,
Poets.
That's right.
we had a
yeah.
published poet, Jane.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, we've had some pretty famous people. Yes. That's probably about. But all of us brought our friends, and that's what kept the group going and growing. And now we're old and we've kind of run out of friends. And we're down to such a small number. But we'll still prevail.
I guess we're hoping to expand by being in 2 locations, that perhaps there will be some people on the west side that would be able to join us, and maybe we would find some people on the east side. And so while we're still in 2 locations, we'll still meet together some of the times.
Yes.
Yeah.
And share our recipes and our patterns
Right.
and our stories. We all have stories about our grandchildren. We have to share.
Yeah.
I remember one time I brought my twin grandsons when they were about 12 years old, and there were some weeds growing in the gutters on Helen's deck on her house, in the gutters, and I thought that really needs to be pulled out of there because they shouldn't be growing weeds. So I asked her if I could bring them, the 2 boys, and they would have that as a service project for their scouting, do a good deed, you know. So they came and got up on ladders, pulled the weeds out of the gutters, and then they had lunch with us. And sometimes we ate out on the deck by the water, and that was always fun. All summer long we would do that. But anyway, the twin boys cleaned out Helen's gutters. And they did their good deed for the day. So that was fun.
Anything else? I'd like to add a personal note. When I joined the quilt group, I always tried to sit next to Emmy Lou, just to absorb her quilting expertise and her quiet demeanor. She's a great role model. So thank you, Emmy Lou, for all you have given us and for making sure we are always quilting close to the edge so we can roll.
Well, it's been a joy. I have enjoyed all 30 years of it. And I'll keep going as long as I can, as long as I can get a ride.